Global Mirror. One deal, many claimants. Israel and Hamas might have reached an agreement on the release of hostages, but it has led to another war in the United States. US President Joe Biden hailed what he called many months of intensive diplomacy and how after 15 months of terror, the hostages will be back home.
I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. More than 15 months of conflict, more than 15 months of terror for the hostages, their families, the Israeli people, more than 15 months of suffering by the innocent people of Gaza. Fighting in Gaza will stop, and soon the hostages will return home to their families.
On the other hand, President-elect Donald Trump is the one who announced to the world the news about the agreement much before Biden did. He posted, and I quote, "We have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you," unquote. At a White House briefing on Wednesday, Biden said he was deeply satisfied this day has come and called the negotiations some of the toughest of his career. Now, while Biden has been saying that the framework for this agreement follows the precise contours of a plan which he first introduced in May 2024, Trump said that the epic agreement was only possible because he won the November presidential election. Meanwhile, at the end of the news conference, when Biden was asked who should take credit for the deal, here's what he had to say.
Who does the history books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh.
Now, despite these contrasting messages coming out of Washington, the two administrations are desperately trying to take credit for this huge relief that might have come for the incoming Trump government, because now they won't have to deal with an immediate chaotic situation, at least in one part of West Asia. So who really is the peacemaker in this entire ceasefire deal? Let's introduce my guests on the show tonight. I'm joined by Vibhuti Jha, former Republican candidate for New York Assembly. I'm also joined by Christopher Hale, Democratic strategist. Vibhuti Jha and Christopher, good evening, namaskar. Welcome to Global Mirror. To you first, Mr. Jha. Give some credit to the Biden administration. They've been negotiating for more than 1 year now. They have done their hard work at Doha, at those talks. Why aren't the Republicans giving them at least some credit for this deal which has come through?
Thank you, Shreya. If this deal goes through, one of the things that is very important is a real victory of hostages. It's a real good thing that hostages would be coming back. But the question here is, I simply like to draw a sports analogy. And my colleague from Democratic Party would know that as in football or in baseball or in cricket, it's always the team that wins. So it's Team United States that has won, in my opinion, cutting across the party lines. Yes, people want to take credit for each one of the things that happen, but that's unnecessary. If this deal were to happen, if Hamas were to sign off on the deal, I think we all are winners, cutting across party lines. That's one opinion that I have. The second issue is very important here. Don't forget that it was Mr. Trump who had brought about the Abrams Accord in his presidency in the 45th term. For whatever reason, it has not fructified. October 7th happened. We know the tragedy that unfolded there. Now, Mr. Biden is declaring that it is his deal, and if Trump takes credit, it's a joke. It's not a joke. It's like it's an entire team effort. Trump is on record making a declaration that if before my swearing in, if you do not release the hostages, all hell will break loose. What impact it had, I'm not on the ground to say that. But what I do want to say, that as of now, we know that the media is already reporting that Hamas is backtracking from the agreement. Israeli parliament has delayed its approval of the accord. Think about it from that point of view. If any of the viewers want to understand Hamas as a chaos, agents of chaos, they must read the Hamas doctrine of 1985-87, where the preamble itself says that they want to destroy Israel and the Jewish state. One of the 32 covenants of that Hamas doctrine says, we will never accept any negotiated settlement because that is un-Islamic. So unless and until Hamas abrogates its entire, the Hamas doctrine, you can always be suspicious about a deal can happen there. Perhaps Hamas is scared with
Sure.
Trump's
We'll have to, of
statement.
course, wait and
Nobody is
watch
taking out any
whether
credit. I'm
Hamas
not taking
agrees
any
to it.
credit. Yes, I'm not taking the credit from the Biden administration at all.
You might
But
be
for
saying
Biden
it,
to
Mr.
say it's
Jha,
a
but Donald
joke,
Trump has taken credit. He first announced it to the world, and then he said this epic agreement came because we won the November presidential elections. So that is, in fact, taking credit for it. But let me get in Christopher Hale into this conversation. Christopher, Donald Trump saying that this epic agreement came in because of the November presidential elections. Perhaps is validated with the fact that this entire agreement has come through, if it does eventually, just a few days ahead of the Donald Trump inauguration. So many are saying that, because Trump is coming in and he said what he said earlier, that you have to, all hell will have to be paid, is why this agreement is coming through.
Donald Trump takes credit for the sun setting in New Delhi and the sun rising here in Washington D.C. He thinks that all of creation is in response to him. The reality of it is it's complicated. I think you're right that the credit is shared between both administrations. Look, there's a precedent in this in the Middle East. Obviously, both Hamas and Netanyahu and Israel have needs to play off both administrations. In 1980, during 1981, 1980-81, the Iran hostage crisis, there was negotiations up to the last minute of Jimmy Carter's presidency. But what's notable is that Ronald Reagan did not try to take credit, even though he might have. I mean, it might have been, in a lot of ways, the work of his administration, his election in 1980 to have those hostages free. He lent Air Force One to the former president, Jimmy Carter, to welcome the hostages home to the United States. So I think that the credit game is a little bit tiresome. It is, as you said, it is the American victory. I think we should view it that way. Matt Miller, the spokesperson for the United States State Department, acknowledged that the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, was pivotal in these negotiations. The president himself acknowledged it. The media obviously is obsessed with getting credit for whose victory this is. But I don't think President Biden is obsessed with it. I don't think the administration incoming should be obsessed with it. It is a victory for the United States. Middle East peace has been a project of this country for the world for 60 years. It's ongoing. This is just one step in this, and I think that we should be happy that we're one step closer to bringing the hostages home, including Americans, and that we're one step closer to bringing peace in the Middle East. It is a process that did not begin with Joe Biden. It will not end with Donald Trump. It will be the American crisis in the Middle East that we'll deal with for the entirety of my life.
It's interesting, Christopher Hale and Vibhuti Jha, how both of you have said that Team America has won, and that should be the emphasis. And Christopher, you have blamed the media as well for being obsessed with the credit war. But it's not us, It's really, look at how Joe Biden answered the question to the reporter when he was asked who should be taking credit for it. And he said, is this a joke? And then you have Donald Trump announcing it to the world when it should be actually the incumbent American president who should be making that announcement, because he's the one who has been leading this entire negotiation at Doha along with Egypt and Qatar. But that did not happen. Donald Trump jumped in to announce it to the world. So really, it's not just the media, but you give out those kind of messages from Washington. What else are we supposed to think? But Vibhuti Jha, this has been an interesting facet to this entire deal if it comes through. There are also many who say that, as I said, Donald Trump coming in has led to this entire conversation happening about the timing of the deal coming through. It could have happened in the past as well. Why only now?
Your question answers itself. Why now? And that's what is important. Did Biden administration, it could have done this before. I mean, I know that coffee discussions and discussions over this peace in Hamas and the peace in that region, we all talked about openly that it is all up to Hamas to release the hostage and the deal is done. Why is Hamas not releasing the hostage? Because they are using that as a bargaining tool against democratic countries, because democracies believe in peace and saving a life. Their ideology and their philosophy is not about saving lives. Their ideology is about taking lives. So already for against all the hostages that have been released so far, they have already got many prisoners back. So look at it from this point of view. Who draws the maximum advantage from this hostage crisis is Hamas, nobody else. And that's what is Trump's call to them was as soon as he won. It was not that he took the decision, he announced it yesterday that I would have done this. He said it that day itself, that if you do not release them prior to my taking oath, all hell will break loose. So let's not, talk about the Trump derangement syndrome, as many Democrats have, that, oh, Trump can't take credit. No, it's not taking credit. It's stating the obvious that this particular statement may have threatened them, may have made them unsure about the unpredictability of what Trump might just do. That threat sometimes works. But I am of the opinion, like Christopher said,
Okay.
political rhetoric and journalistic rhetoric is dangerous. Trump has never said that sun sets or rises on India as per his will. So let's not fudge the issue on that account. Even rhetorics like this plays out in the public eye. I have not claimed the credit. Trump has not claimed the credit. And bringing India in this conversation is absolutely unnecessary. It was not important at all. Thank you.
Can I ask you, Vibhuti Jha, before I go to Christopher Hale, can I then ask you, do you think that if this deal comes through, would you say that it is one of the biggest things that the Biden administration leaves behind in its legacy?
I agree with Christopher on this matter, and both of us share the same view. It is always the team that wins. It is Team America, and I said it. It is always also very important to know on whose watch something happens. It's like it's like a football match or a cricket match. The man who scores the winning goal, his goal counts as a winning goal. It's called a winning goal, even though two other touchdowns or whatever are part of the same total. Likewise, it is here is everybody advances the relay race. The baton falls in somebody's hand. The last mile runner gets the credit for the gold medal. He is the one who is screaming the most when he wins the race. So in this particular case, I would say, let's be humble. Let's be very clear that if hostages are released, it doesn't matter who takes the credit. Who does the credit belong to? It belongs to all those people who played a role. That let's settle on that as a civil dialogue.
Okay. Christopher, both the envoys of Biden, Brett McGurk, and Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, were present at the Doha talks. And therefore, how would you see this entire process coming through from both sides? How much, weight would you give to each side as far as the logical conclusion of this deal is concerned now?
I think it's, once again, the reality, the vitality, the strength of this country. The Hamas knows that the United States stands with Israel, and that talk about all hell breaking loose. Hell has broken loose on Hamas for the past 15 months because of their actions on October 7. And so I think that the United States, the threat of force, the strength of our will, strength of our military, was the biggest deterrent here. And I think it's really important that Hamas understood that they were not just facing the Israeli forces, but they were facing the entire Western world. So I think, once again, it is an accomplishment that both men can hang their hats on, like in 1980, 81, Carter and Reagan. I think what's distinctive about this is the Iran hostage crisis. The regime in Iran was very clearly trying to snub Jimmy Carter in the way they did it. I think the way it's happening, it's very clearly that this is done in a transition. It's not done in a snub to Biden. It's not done in a snub to Trump. It's truly a chance for both men to claim victory. They did it together, but the victory is for the country writ large. I think one of the unwritten stories that of the next 20, 30, 40 years is that Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I think, get along actually quite well. And I think their administrations will get along in this. Have gotten along in this transition period. And I think this is an accomplishment of the transition, the peaceful transition of power here in the United States.
Well, that is something that we all would like to see, one visual of Donald Trump and Joe Biden getting on very well. But of course, from the Biden administration, I have some numbers with me here. You had the CIA director, Bill Burns, make visits for this entire peace process to come through 19 times, Antony Blinken 13, and Biden, of course, was there at Israel on the 18th of October, days after this Hamas attack had happened. So some credit to them, and of course, some credit to the incoming President Donald Trump, without whose words, perhaps, the kind of, as Vibhuti Jha said, the kind of leading through this process wouldn't have happened. And hopefully, at the end of the day, the winner among all of this should be the hostages coming back safely to their homes. We'll leave it there to both of you. Thank you very much, Vibhuti Jha and Christopher Hale, for joining us on Global Mirror and sharing your perspectives.